All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today we're doing Administrator Basics Part 4. So just some general housekeeping. We're going to try and keep this 45 minutes. Today's might run a little bit longer. Um, Definitely submit your questions through the question portal, and then we'll get this video processed and posted as soon as possible. And any follow-up questions that we don't get to, definitely send those to support@doublenot.com, and we will get those answered as soon as possible. So on today's agenda, we're going to start with a little Q&A from the previous webinar. So any questions that you have, if you did get a chance to look at that video, definitely ask those now. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, when you do, send those questions into support@doublenot.com. Then we're going to look at setting up online donations, creating custom donation acknowledgement letters, displaying a donation request at every checkout, and then we're going to take a dive into reporting. All right, so to start, what questions, if any, from the previous webinar? All right, well, we will jump right into the donations piece. So I'm going to log in to my testing account here. And the first thing we are going to do is we are going to set up an online donation. So in order to do that, what you'll want to do is first make sure that you have that financial account created. One second here, looks like we just popped a question. So Lori, the webinar is going to be up here under training videos. So when you log in, if you click training videos, I don't think we've updated it here. But when you're logged into the actual environment and you click training videos, you'll be able to watch all of those videos there. And then definitely any questions you have, again, please reach out. So the first thing when it comes to donations that we're going to want to do is make sure we have our financial account created for that donation. And then from there, we're going to go to feature list, event management, and then click this donations tab here. So in this account, I don't have any donations created. I'm going to click new donation. And this next screen is going to look very similar to sort of to building out an event with the same format. So description is going to be the name of the donation. We're going to call this one donate now. Setting a campaign begin date. So we'll just say we're going to run this one for 2020. So we'll set 1/1/2020 until 12/31/2020. Minimum donation, we can leave this at 0. Essentially, we'll take what we can get here. Campaign goal, how much, what's your goal for this campaign, whether it be like 100,000, that's what we'll put here. This next piece, so donor entry amount. So the first option here that's defaulted, this is going to allow the end user just to input any amount to be donated. If you choose this next radio button here, this allows you to set some standard amounts. So we could say something like 5, 10, 50, 100. Second here. $100. If you want to put another amount, we could put something like 500. Lastly here, if you want to also give them the option to enter in their own amount, you can check this box here. And this sort of is like with, you know, an other amount that's not currently listed. URL for additional details. So if you want to link out somewhere, again, like in the first webinar, I don't recommend having them branch out somewhere else outside of DoubleKnot to gather information. I would say you should put your campaign description in here, add a picture, whatever that may be. So you can publish this donation on the calendar. And then this option here on banner, so that adds up here at the top of your website, that will add a link to this donation to the top. So again, campaign description, this is the information about the actual campaign. Then we have our categories, so you can categorize donations as well. So category 1, 2, 3. I didn't build one of these out. We're not going to give it a category. Accept donations from. So here we have only members who have signed in, and we have anyone. So anyone essentially means they don't have to have a logon account with your system. 9 times out of 10, you'll take money wherever you can get it. So there's no point in making this only available to people who already have an account. Receipt contact info. So this is going to appear on the receipt as who to contact with any questions. We can add a receipt confirmation message saying thank you, thank you for your donation, whatever that may be. We can add that in right here. If you want to receive a copy of the receipt anytime someone donates, you can check this box and then enter in email separated by a semicolon. Log on sign-on prompt. So you can optionally prompt them or require them to log on or create a profile. This being different is there is that option for them to create a profile, whereas up here, if you say only members who have signed in, that means they already have to have a profile. Next is test mode. So if you don't actually want to take donations, you're testing this out, you can turn test mode on, and then you can get all the way up to the shopping cart, but the system won't actually let you to check out. Prompt to sign up for e-lists. So this field here, after they check out, it's going to prompt them to sign up for any of your publicly available e-lists. And then there's skip shopping cart, which kind of, if they make a donation, the shopping cart within DoubleKnot, that concept is right before they enter their payment information. So it would just skip that page and bring them straight into entering in their credit card information if you turn this on. Next, we have recurring. So we can turn on recurring. If we enable this, this allows this donation to be automatically withdrawn each month from the user's account. Then we have our payment type. So whether it be pay online only, if you want them to pay at the time of checkout, or the mail options so that they could mail in that check. So a question about test mode. So if you have test mode on, unless you've linked this out somewhere to where it can be viewed by a customer already. So if you posted this link onto your website and then you had test mode on, a customer would be able to see that because you've directly linked to this donation. But if you hadn't published this, put the link on your website, then a customer would not be able to access this donation. Convenience fee, so you can charge a convenience fee here. If I check this, I can add $1 or a percentage of their total. And then lastly, deposit payments into. So where should this money flow to on financial reporting? And then let's click save. Oh, campaign begin date is not valid. Yeah, so another good question in terms of recurring. So if I set this to recurring, that does not force it the donation to be recurring. So I'll go ahead and enable this so you can see what that looks like. So now if I click details, I'm going to copy this link and we're going to go test out this donation. So I'm going to pull up a browser where I'm not logged in. That way I see exactly what an end user would see. So this is what the customer would see. Obviously, it's going to be branded to match your site. You'll notice here's where my details about the campaign show up. And then down here, I did the blank amount so they can just enter in what they want. So $10,000 here. Let's go more like 1,000. And then to that last question about recurring. So when you enable recurring, it gives them this option for this to be a one-time or a monthly donation. So we're going to say one time and click continue. If you choose to skip the shopping cart, this is the page that is skipped. So if you do that, we'll skip this page here and we will go straight into the next page, which would be showing giving us the ability to actually enter in our credit card information. Can someone raise their hand again if they can hear me? Perfect. Okay, so some people can hear me. Okay. So then once they fill out their credit card information, the next step obviously would just be clicking make payment here. The system's going to process that, and then it would send an email to anyone that, if you set up that notification to go to another staff member, they're going to receive a copy of this receipt as well. Any other questions on creating that donation? So next, let's talk about, next up we have the custom notification letter or acknowledgement letter. So most likely, most of y'all do not already have access to this permission within DoubleKnot. So if this is something you're interested in, definitely reach out to DoubleKnot support, letting them know what organization you're with and that you need permission in order to access template management. So within DoubleKnot, we have this piece called template management on the feature list. And assuming you have that permission, you would see it. And this is where we use Word documents and mail merge in order to add an attachment to the receipt. So I've mocked one up here just to take a look at. So essentially, I mean, it can have like your logo on it, things like that. But we use these mail merge templates to pull in information from the specific donation, and then we send that as a link on their receipt. So I already have this created and saved. So the next step would be, I'll just delete it since it's already here. The next step is coming in and clicking new template, giving it a name. So this name here is going to be visible to the end user. So whatever you say here is what the link is going to appear on their receipt. We can leave this at activity template. Under share template, if you're planning on using this across different organizations, so top level orgs versus sub orgs, you'll want to select this third option of this organization, affiliates, and immediate child organizations. Then we're going to click choose file. And this is going to pull up your actual computer, and we're going to go find the file that I've created. And then we'll click add. So that's the first step. So now this document is in the system. The next piece is assign templates to items. So if I check this box and then click OK, this is where we'll actually pick what event this should be assigned to. So I'm going to find that Donate Now campaign that I just created and click Add. And then I'll click Done. And then the final field here is actually mapping the mail merge fields that I built out in my document to their corresponding DoubleKnot field. So if I go back to DoubleKnot and I click map template fields and OK. It's going to default what it can. So based on the name, it's going to map first name all the way down to state or postal code because they're the same on my document as they are in DoubleKnot. And then I'm going to just go in and select the rest of these items. So depending on what you want to show on your receipt or what you want to show on your donor letter, you know, it could be different here. So definitely, if you have any questions, reach out to support@doubleknot.com. And then the last thing we're going to want to do is under report access options, we're going to want to click display link to download report on receipt. So this gives the customer the ability to actually see this document, and then we'll click save. So next I'll click done. And now we're going to go back and we're going to actually do another donation. So I'm going to go back to that link here. And let's say we're going to give $100 this time and click continue and then check out. Payment all looks good. We'll give myself a new name. And I'm going to make my payment. Okay, so now in the receipt that they actually received, if we come in here under event management and I go look at donate now, the receipt that they received in their email, let's take a look. We'll issue a new one. So here under additional documentation, we have this spot for our donor letter. So if I click this, it's going to download as a PDF. And when I open that, now my mail merge fields are going to be formatted into that template. So here we have the name, the address of the person, and then of course the rest of the information, the amount. You'll notice this date, most likely in my actual mail merge template, I have the date format switched up a little bit. So definitely make sure when you do those mail merges that you do test these out. Are there any questions on this template? Let's see. All right. Any last questions on the custom template? All right. So next we're going to talk about the integrated cart donation. So this piece of DoubleKnot will prompt for a donation anytime someone checks out within DoubleKnot, except if they're making a donation. So if someone came on and they donated for Donate Now, the system's not going to prompt them to donate again. So in order to do this on the feature list, we'll want to come down to event management. In this feature, although it is called a donation, this is actually built under dues. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click new dues. And we're going to call this one the cart donation. Setting a begin and end date. And then on cost as per, we're going to set this to registration skip individual registrants. For cost, we're going to leave this blank. We're going to let the end user choose how much they want to give. So we're going to leave this one blank. And then we're going to give it a category. We'll leave it at none. So we could give this a category, but essentially for this testing purposes, we do not need to. So really what you need to do is you need to give the event a name, set it to registration, skip individual registrants, $0. And then a lot of this information, you can add in a receipt confirmation message again if you'd like, a cancellation policy. You can come back in and fill out these details if you'd like to. We're going to set this to pay online only. And then I'm going to select that donation account. So when I click save here, this is going to create my dues event. So now I have the cart donation. So now we need to actually build out the information, giving them the option of the cost. So to do that, I'm going to come under forms and I'm going to click new form. And we'll call this the cart donation form. And I'm going to click save. Under edit form, we're going to give them sort of like a, let's see, we will do radio buttons here. And we'll say, you know, like level 1, $10. And then if you want them to, make sure you always put the cost here so it actually charges them what they select. And then you can allow them to enter in another amount. But in order to do that, it does add one extra step because you'll notice we entered the cost for those amounts here, but down here, there's no cost associated with it. So once I add this item, I actually have to create another item. I have to add item to page. And what we need to do is select a not a drop down menu. We need to select a variable cost item. And we'll give it a name. So we'll say other amount. In the cost you put here, so essentially what happens if I put 1, it's going to multiply whatever they enter by that $1. So we'll want to put 1 there. And then we need to link this item. So right here under other options, we're going to select please enter the donation amount as this other option that we're linking to. And then I'm going to click add item. So notice how nothing displays here. It's actually linked to this piece here. So you could add some more information on this form, letting them know like a picture, you know, what this money is going to be going to. You could add that in. I'm going to click continue here and done. And then we're going to go back to dues. We're going to assign that form to this dues event. So assign forms. And we call this the cart donation. So I'm going to click assign and mark it as required. And then the last step here, after we click done, we have to go to utilities. So this is going to be under the top level organization. We're going to go to utilities, cart configuration. And then where it says upsell event here, we're going to select cart donation and then save. So now in order to demo this, we're going to go pick one of these events. that we've looked at. So we'll choose Day Camp 2020. And we're going to take that link and go to our other browser. So let's register here, continue. Continue. And continue. And then once we get to the shopping cart page, everything looks as normal. When we click checkout here, it's going to prompt us to enter in this additional donation. So definitely, if you were to do this, you wouldn't want this to be the only thing on the screen. You'd want to add an item above this, letting them know where this money is going to go to. Are there any questions on this integrated cart donation? All right, so next up we have reporting. So definitely, I imagine there's going to be some questions here. So within DoubleKnot, there's multiple ways to get to reports, and each way you go may show different reports. So we have the big one here that just says reports. Okay, so I did just get one question that I think is beneficial. So if you do use this cart donation, so that means people have multiple items at checkout, and how does that appear in financial reports? So these are going to report as two separate items. So if you're looking at something like the revenue report, if they're going to have different financial accounts, so those lines will have a separate line for the two different items. So you can see both of them on the same report, but it'll definitely break those out based on the event name. All right, so we have these, if we click reports here, we can get to a couple different levels of reports. So we can get to administrator reports, which are going to be high level reports. So if I run some of these view registration reports here, these are going to look at everything across the system. So donations, facilities, calendar activities, programs, membership, these are going to report on all of those items. So under administrator reports here, they look at everything. And then it's based on like different modules in the system, the rest of the reports here. So facility reports will look at all facilities in that organization. Donations will look at all the donations, and so on and so forth through here. Another way to get to reports is by going into, if we're looking at event reports, I can go into a specific event and I can click reports, and these reports are just going to run and look at these specific reports for this specific event. So if I were to run view registrations, this is just going to pull back the information from this specific camp. Another option, so if you want to look at multiple calendar activities or multiple facilities, if you notice in the top here, there's this option for report multiple. If I select this option, this lets me pick and choose which events I want to look at. So I can select just a certain number of events. I could select all my events. I can filter it by category. and look at just events in those categories. And then I get my reports that are going to pull back all that data. So for something like summer camp, if they're built out as different events, but you want to get a high level picture, you could come in this way and choose the events that you want to look at. So we're going to look at we'll look at this day camp here. Actually, let's look at something that has registrations. So family fun day. Does this have any forms attached? So it does. So if we come in here and we click reports, and we'll just run, so these view registration reports, these are probably the most common used reports when it comes to event reporting or facility program, as well as membership. Sometimes they're titled differently, but let's just kind of talk about these. So if you want to look at the form information, you'll want to select either this one that's looking at all registrations and registrant info. This is going to pull back everything we collect from the end users at the registration process. But if you don't need all that information, you can choose one of these other ones, whether it's leaving out form information, this one without form and registrant, or without registrant and form. This one's just going to pull back one line per registration, regardless of if they signed up 6 kids. It's just going to pull back that one line and say, you know, they registered 5 children and 1 adult. And then lastly, we could look at it where it just shows the form information but doesn't show the individual registrant's information. But let's look first at view registrations and all registrant information. Okay, so we have 2 here. We have 2 lines. So what we'll notice on this line is these are both on the same registration, but it's going to be different people. So we'll notice they signed up an adult and a youth for this registration. So this one is reporting back on all of the information. So each registrant has their own line. And depending on your permissions, you have the ability to customize these reports. But I do want to point this out, and this is really big because we get a lot of questions on it. So when you customize a report, that custom report will only show for events that have the same exact forms assigned to them. So if we go back and look, this event had 2 forms assigned. It had the FFD registered info and the FFD emergency contact info. So if I am looking at a report that is looking at form data, so view registrations and all registered information is pulling back that form data, if I customize that on this specific event, that custom report is only going to show up for events that are also using these 2 forms. So if you create a custom report and then you're a week later, 2 weeks later, you want to run that custom report on a different event, if it doesn't have these 2 forms, it's not going to show up. So when we come in here, we're going to go back to reports and we're going to run that report. In order to customize this, I'll click this button up here that says Open in Designer. And depending on how much form data you are collecting, this could take a little while to load as we load in all those form columns. So within here, you have the ability to remove fields. So if you were creating like a roster report and some of these fields don't necessarily matter, you can click these X buttons to remove the field. So X will remove them off. You can add additional fields. This report's going to collect everything or pull in everything that we've collected. So if you're starting with this report, there's probably not too big of a chance that you need to add a field in, but there could be some scenarios where you do. So you can come down to the bottom and you can choose to add a field here. You have the ability to do different things like, right here we're saying sort by registration number, but we could sort on something different. We also have the ability to visually group. So visually group will group like items in a category. So if I choose to visually group by something, we'll visually group on first and last name. Probably wouldn't come up too often, but you know, I guess anything's possible. So when we visually group, if we were to preview this, just so you can see what visually grouping does. So it's going to pull those two fields out up here, so first and last name, and then it's going to separate them. So if there was a case where you have a summer camp program that's multiple weeks and you wanted to see what each registrant was doing, if they were coming to multiple weeks, that might be a case where you could use this. But essentially it will separate out those visually grouped fields, and every registration that is like that will show under here. Any questions on visually grouping? Okay, so one question was, what does the pivot do? So you can create pivot I don't know if it would necessarily make too much sense in this with just this little data, but you can create pivots on this. So down at the bottom, if we were to add pivot, so we could choose a column. I'm trying to think of a good use for this and see if I can come up with anything. If not, I might have to reach out to you separately on this one. Let's see. So one thing you could do the pivot on. Well, let's see if this is going to work. We're going to unvisually group by these two. And let's see. So we'll remove first and last name, and let's see if we can do this. Add pivot column. Let's see if this will work. I might have just broke this report, but we're going to try it. Yep, I broke it. All right, so let's see if we go back in here. Let's change these to group. Let's remove some of these fields that might be different. So when I chose group there, essentially if two lines were the exact same, since all of these are groups, it's going to group those two lines together. So it would turn this one report into two. Let's see. So we have type and count. So yeah, so this one should work. Didn't. Type. So essentially here, this isn't the perfect case scenario of how the pivots work, because we're pulling back a line for each person. But if we did just pull back, um, if we were just pulling back one line, over here we could have it say like, so this registration, how many adults and how many youth did they bring? So we can add a pivot column on a field and do things like count to count the number of those of that type. Definitely not used too often, but if you ever do have a scenario where you think it may be useful, definitely reach out. And then once you create your custom report, what you'll want to do is click Save As. So you won't have the ability to save over the generic reports that are here, but you can give it a custom name. And when we save this, now the reports are the custom reports that you create will show up at the bottom down here. So we just really looked at that at the first field under editing these reports there. If we come in and we customize this report again, you can do things like add a summary at the top. So if you wanted to add like the registrant count, you could add that in. A lot of these fields you probably wouldn't use. You can go to filters and we can change our filter logic here. So what we're looking at by default, this report's looking at everyone that's registered for this event. Another thing under style here, so there is one thing that I do see changed every now and then. So at the bottom under style, there is this option to show main report in field value style. So this would be useful if you were doing sort of a printout for like an event and you needed, you were creating a flip book so you could flip through and maybe it's the emergency response. But essentially here, this one would print out, you'd be able to print out a page and you could separate these by person or separate these out onto two separate pages. And it just is a more viewable form of this report. So if you were going to print this off, you could do that. What other reporting related questions do y'all have? Okay, yeah, so once this video is posted, when you log in, if you click training videos, it'll be posted under here along with the past couple webinars. Another one, what was the base report used for this result? So I just use view registrations and all registrant information. And then in order to get it to look like this, again, I click style and I scroll down to the bottom and I use show main report in field value style. So one thing that we wanted to look at was a report that shows form costs. So I'm assuming we're looking at financial accounts here. So if I come into financial accounts and I click finance reports, let's see if we have that report in here. So if I run the revenue report with form cost, let's see if this one's going to do it. No results. Posting date is yesterday. Let's look at the previous month and see if we get any results. No form questions on these. Okay. So let me see. Yeah, so unfortunately in this report only runs up to yesterday. And I'm not sure, let's just look in the previous year if anyone has done anything. No results. Okay. So to look at a revenue report, this one will separate out form costs. So essentially here we see the total and we see the amount that was in form costs. So total is the total amount booked, so it doesn't necessarily mean the total amount paid. Online payment is going to be what they actually paid. So there may be payment schedules set up, and that's why this one doesn't equal. But if we look down here on this one, we can see that the total booking was $300, but $200 of that was what they entered in based on forms. So when you have an event that has forms set up and maybe you're selling an additional t-shirt as part of the registration, that comes over as a form cost rather than an actual event cost. So we can see that separated out, that $200 of this was for answers on a form. And again, this report is the revenue report with form costs. So if I click done here, it's going to be right here, revenue report with form costs. It may be in a different location on your reports because I am in a test environment. We do not have all of the same reports. Yeah, so another question here. So in these financial reports, like in a revenue report, for example, total is going to be less any discount. So if we look here in current month, this total column is going to be less any discount listed in the discount column. So let me see here, what other questions? Correct, yeah, so this one's going to show any online payment, which is actually payment that ran through Double Knot. Any online credit, which would be refunds you've issued through Double Knot. And then offline payments or offline debit and offline credit, that's when you adjust the balance on a registration and you say like they paid it with an offline check or you issued an offline refund. Those are going to show up under offline credit and offline debit. Yeah, so if you had a 100% discount, so in this case, it would say $10 discount, $0 total, and there would have been no payment. But total is less any discount. So if you have a number in the discount field and a number in the total field, but you didn't have anything in the payment field, that would be sort of separate there. They would still owe something. What other questions do we have? All right. Well, I do have a couple follow-ups that I'll follow up on a few users from through support. Definitely, if any questions come up that you didn't get a chance to ask or you think of later, definitely send those into support. In terms of creating that integrated cart donation, if you go under feature list and user manuals, we do have a document dedicated to that, setting or integrating checkout donation requests into your website. So if you click that, it'll walk you through step by step on that process. And with that, definitely reach out with any questions, and I hope y'all have a great rest of your day. Thank y'all.